A soldier snapped her dog tags off her neck in public. The name on them stopped the general cold. The dust hadn't even settled from the morning drill when Sergeant Cole Hartman grabbed the chain around her neck and ripped it free in front of 400 soldiers. The metal bit into her skin. She didn't flinch. She just stared at him, jaw tight, eyes burning, because she knew exactly what was written on those tags, and she knew what would happen the moment he read them out loud. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. Her name was Elena Reyes, and she had spent 11 weeks proving she belonged at Fort Ironwood. Not because anyone made it easy. Hartman had ridden her since day one. Harder than the others, louder than the others. Like he had something to settle with a woman who wouldn't quit no matter how much mud he made her eat. She'd told herself it was just the job. Drill sergeants broke people down so the army could build them back up. That was the story she repeated to herself at 2 in the morning, boots still wet, shoulders screaming. But this morning was different. This morning, in front of the whole company, Hartman had decided to make an example of her. You think a name gets you special treatment out here? He barked, chains swinging from his fist. The crowd went still. Somewhere behind her, a phone was already recording. A woman near the gate, capturing every second, unaware she was about to catch history. Elena's hands trembled at her sides. Not from fear, from restraint. She thought about her father, about the years of silence, about the promise she'd made never to use his name to open a single door. She had built her rank alone. Every callus, every push-up, every night she cried where no one could see. Those were hers. And now this man was holding her identity in his fist like a trophy, and she had no idea whether staying silent would protect her secret or destroy her. That was the moral weight of the moment. Because Elena could have said something. One sentence, and Hartman would have backed down instantly. But she'd watched too many people get handed respect because of a name on a wall. She wanted hers earned, not given. Even if it cost her, even if it meant standing there and taking it. She thought she'd never have to choose between her pride and her past. She was wrong. Across the courtyard, General Ezra Jackson was mid-conversation with 2 colonels when the commotion pulled his attention. He had 31 years in uniform and had seen every kind of dressing down a drill sergeant could deliver. But something about the way this soldier stood, spine straight, chin level, refusing to break, made him stop walking. He crossed the yard with the unhurried authority of a man who had never needed to raise his voice to be heard. The crowd parted like water around a stone. Boots shuffled. Someone whispered. The air itself seemed to hold its breath as the general reached out and took the dog tags from Hartman's open hand. He turned them over once, read the stamped letters, and went still. For a long moment, nobody moved. Not Hartman, whose face had gone pale. Not the 400 soldiers standing in formation, sensing that something enormous had just shifted beneath their feet. Not Elena, who watched the general's throat tighten around a name he hadn't spoken aloud in almost 20 years. Reyes, he said quietly, like he was testing whether the word was real. Captain Daniel Reyes was your father. It wasn't a question. Elena nodded once, and something in her chest finally cracked open, not from shame, but from the exhausting weight of carrying a name she'd refused to use, even when it would have been so easy. The general's eyes softened in a way none of the young soldiers had ever seen. 20 years earlier, then Lieutenant Ezra Jackson had served under Daniel Reyes in a valley whose name never made the news, in an ambush that should have killed them all. Reyes hadn't just given orders that day. He had physically pulled Jackson out of a collapsing position, taken shrapnel meant for him, and never once let anyone call it heroism. He simply said he did what anyone would do. He died 11 months later, quietly, from complications no headline ever covered, leaving behind a little girl who apparently grew up to eat dirt at Fort Ironwood and never say a word about who her father was. The general turned to Hartman, and his voice, when it finally came, wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. You put your hands on a soldier who has more discipline in her silence than most men have in their entire careers. He placed the tags gently back into Elena's palm and closed her fingers around them himself. Her father saved my life and asked for nothing in return. She spent 11 weeks doing the exact same thing, and none of you noticed. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reverent. Then, somewhere in the ranks, one soldier began to clap. Then another. Within seconds, the courtyard at Fort Ironwood, beneath the words honor, duty, country carved into its walls, filled with applause for a woman who had never once asked for it. Because kindness doesn't vanish. It waits, and it finds its way back, sometimes in the shape of a chain torn from someone's neck, sometimes in the eyes of an old soldier who finally recognizes the debt he never got to repay. Elena walked back into formation that day heavier with pride than she had ever been with mud, carrying her father's name the way he had carried his, quietly, and without needing anyone to see. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments what part hit you hardest, and subscribe for more true-to-life stories of courage, sacrifice, and the debts that never truly go unpaid.